5 inflation taxes. Number 1, the wages tax. In economics, real means after inflation. Inflation is now reducing the real earnings of many Americans. As the purchasing power of a dollar falls, many Americans are taxed on the extent to which their paychecks aren't keeping up with inflation. Numbers I saw indicated that inflation was about 7.8% and wages were up about 5.5%. Okay, if you're doing the math, that means workers are suffering about a 2.3% loss in real wages. So you might be thinking at this point, well, who cares? Inflation is defined as increasing costs and wages. If my wages go up with costs, so what? Well, here are just 2 so whats. So what? Number 1, as you make more money, you move up to a higher tax bracket. It's called bracket creep. Okay, the price of imports goes up. This is another podcast that hopefully I'll write at a later date. But I think we may be leaving the golden age of low-cost products in the U.S. A perfect storm of about 5 effects are happening at the same time. People leaving the workforce, inflation, declining real wages, tariff increases, shrinking world trade. Look for more on that topic in an upcoming podcast. Now back to my list of the 5 taxes. We've said 1 was the wages tax. Number 2 is the housing tax. While homeowners are likely happy to see the value of their homes rising, they won't be so excited when their property taxes go up at their next assessment. They can also expect to face higher insurance premiums on their inflated home values. The cost of utilities is rising, and the poor, who often are renters, are not immune from these inflationary pressures, since landlords pass along their inflation-driven costs. Number 3, the food tax. Another way inflation is raising taxes on ordinary Americans is through the taxes on the goods and services they consume. The cost of groceries and going out to eat, those are both increasing. Economics is the study of the production and distribution of products and services. Well, all products get distributed, and people who provide services distribute themselves in planes, trains, and automobiles. The 4th, the sales tax. Sales taxes are set as a percentage of the item you buy. But as the price goes up, the percentage remains the same, but the total sales tax goes up. See? Some states even tax food. While teaching in Eastern Europe, I showed the students my receipt from the local grocery store and complained about the 21% value-added tax on food. An Eastern European student asked, well, you have to make the poor pay taxes in some form. I was astounded. To my Western ears, making the poor pay didn't ring well. But that's what's happening now in our country, the United States. The poor are being forced to pay higher prices for goods and the sales taxes that come with them. Oh, by the way, food is not taxed in the U.S., but just about everything else you buy is. And those are regressive taxes that increase as you proceed down the food chain, to use a phrase, or as income decreases, to be more specific. The 5th one, the retirement tax. Okay, as I get closer to retirement, along with my fellow 75 million baby boomers, I'm becoming more concerned that my savings from 50 years in the workforce will be enough. The inflation tax is particularly difficult for retirees because it eats away at the real rates of return on savings accounts, certificates of deposits, and fixed income securities. Americans with such savings are receiving negative rates of return after adjusting for inflation. The Fed raised the discount rate to a range of 0.25% to 0.5%. Inflation is at 7.8. Okay, 7.8 minus 0.5 means retirees are losing over 7% each year. Each year. So over 3 years, compounded, that's a quarter of your lifestyle. A pretty smart guy once called compound interest the 8th wonder of the world. He said, "He who understands it earns it. He who doesn't pays it." That smart guy was Albert Einstein. He gave a pretty good explanation for what's happening in the middle of the year 2022. The federal government is reducing the pain of paying off its debt on the backs of the poor who are paying the inflation taxes.